My name is Mark. I was held hostage in Iraq for 2.5 years. I am ready to answer your questions. My story is this. I worked for an American IT company called Bearing Point. In April 2007, I agreed to a 3-month business trip to Iraq. I arrived in Baghdad on April 2, 2007. My job was to develop a reporting system for a Ministry of Finance software program. In May 2007, 100 Iraqi MIA policemen broke into our building and kidnapped me and 4 British security guards. We were taken to different places for 6 months. In December 2007, I was separated from the other Brits and held with 2 Americans. In June 2008, I was brought back to Baghdad, and that was the last time I had a chance to communicate with other hostages. In May 2009, the Americans exchanged the 2nd Army commander, Laith al-Khazali, for the bodies of 2 British guards. Later, in September, they released 100 military personnel for the body of another guard. On December 30, 2009, after 946 days or 2 years and 7 months and 1 day of confinement, I was exchanged for the army leader, Qais al-Khazali. The bodies of the last hostages were handed over to Britain in early 2012.
How did you manage not to lose your mind? Were you constantly afraid for your life, or did you realize that sooner or later they would use you for the deal?
In the last year, I had a TV and even a PlayStation, which helped a lot. As soon as they took the blindfold off my face, I started connecting dots on the wall, imagining it was a subway diagram, and came up with a new computer. I also had a curtain with different figures on it, on which I sometimes solved math problems and interviewed my pillow.
Were you just held, or were you bullied in some way?
I was beaten, my ribs were broken, a blow to the head gave me a crack on the head, glass objects broke on my leg. They kept me in chains for 2 years. On top of that, I was blindfolded and handcuffed for the first year. They also liked to act out my execution and everything.
What was it like to see again a year later?
It was very strange. Well, because I was kept in complete darkness, there was no problem with sunlight. When they let me out of the room, my eyes were constantly watering and I had a severe headache.
Please tell me about your living conditions and the physical and mental stress you went through.
Every 2 months they moved me to a new place. One day they took me outside, put me on my knees, one of them put the barrel to my head and pulled the trigger. At that moment, the other man behind me fired the other gun. I thought I was dead.
Did they fake your execution? Why would they do that? What was the point of it? Were they trying to get some information out of you, or were they just mocking you?
I don't know exactly why they did it. I think it was to scare me. By the way, they were good at it. It also really pissed me off that they didn't believe that I worked in IT, they thought I was a scout or something.
I don't suppose they've shown you to the doctor once in those 2 years and 7 months. How have your wounds healed? Are you doing well now, or do you still have some problems?
Almost all the wounds have healed. I still had a scar on my leg and a dent in my head. One of my back teeth had to be extracted, because my jaw had been hit once with a Kalashnikov and part of the tooth broke off.
What were your first 24 hours after your return?
I was handed over to the British Embassy in Baghdad. I turned on the TV and saw Lady Gaga. I didn't understand what kind of character she was. And it was very strange to see myself in all the news.
Did you have Stockholm Syndrome? Is that the kind of thing where you feel sympathy for your captor?
No, believe me, I certainly didn't have Stockholm Syndrome or anything like that.
Were there any positive qualities about your captors? Did you have any moments when the environment was more relaxed, or was the relationship always tense and frightening?
Sometimes we joked and played board games. Sometimes we watched tennis on the Al Jazeera Sports Channel. But that wasn't very often.
Did it feel like you had to give in to them and let them win? What was it like when you were winning?
Sometimes I would win, and they didn't mind. But I really didn't want to win all the time and make fools of them. It would be bad for my health.
Did you play with the same people who broke your ribs and everything else? Or were there different people there, both the kinder ones and the ones who were always mean to you?
No, this was already happening when they brought me back to Baghdad. It was the guys from the Northern Group, that's what they called themselves. It was much easier with them.
How do you feel about your captors?
I don't feel anything in particular. They were against the military occupation, And it pissed me off, because I'm not a military man.
You talk so calmly about it. Aren't you angry with them at all? What would happen if they were on your land? Would you kill them? Would you torture them? Would you want them imprisoned?
What's done is done. I can't turn back time. I knew where I was going and I was aware of the risks. Of course, I could not have imagined that I would be held for so long and for political reasons. Had I met him again, I just wanted to talk, and our conversation would have been on neutral ground.
After everything you've been through, are you experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that?
When it was over, I was examined by a military psychologist. He said that for the most part everything was fine. There was still a couple of problematic moments, though. I used to have constant flashbacks 2 or 3 times a minute, but now they're down to twice a day.
How has everything that happened to you changed your life?
I have drastically changed my work schedule. I used to be a workaholic, but now I work only a few months a year and rest the rest of the time. Because you realize that you have to enjoy life while you can do it.
Did you learn their language? If so, did it happen on its own, or did you try to learn it?
I tried to learn Arabic, and I understood some of their local slang. It helped me understand which parts of Iraq the new wardens were coming from.
Did you get anything positive out of the situation? I try to imagine it all, but nothing good comes to mind. I was in Talal in 2006, and I was surprised at how horribly everyone treated each other there. I can't even imagine what you went through.
Of course, I lived in an Iraqi house during wartime, so it was interesting to understand how people live without electricity and water. So I partially learned their language and learned a lot about Islam.
What have you learned about Islam? Just wondering what you think about it.
I think it's a good religion if you're a man. If you compare it to Catholicism, Islam is much tougher. If you don't play by Islam's rules, you will be punished very severely, while in Christianity you will get nothing. Honestly, it also feels a lot like a cult.
Besides being released and being able to see your family, what else did you want while you were there?
I don't know why, but I really wanted garlic bread.
Did your captors tell you why they killed the others and not you? Did you offer them something to encourage them not to kill you?
They told me that some were killed because they were trying to escape, and others because they were in a house that the army thought should have been raided. I regret now that I didn't get more details from them at the time. At the time I thought only one thing: they were dead, and there was nothing I could do about it. I had to concentrate on myself.
Can you remember the worst moment of your imprisonment? And what was the best moment besides your release?
It was in 2009 when I found out that the others were dead. After that, they took off the chains I had been chained to for 2 years. I thought it would be very symbolic to hang myself with them. The best moment was when, a year later, they uncuffed me and let me stand up.
Were you not allowed to stand? What's it like?
I was handcuffed, chained and blindfolded for almost a year. I couldn't even move much. Because of this I got very sick and lost all my muscles. When they took the handcuffs off me, my shoulders and back were sore for a few more months.
How were you fed?
For the first 6 months the food was awful. They only gave me rice and water. Then I was moved to the family home, and the food there was already pretty good: fish, lamb, etc.
Why did they suddenly improve conditions? Did you find common ground with them?
I don't know. It's probably because I got really sick and was moved to the new Iraqis.
Did you have someone, wife, child, family that you kept fighting for?
When I was first captured, I told them I had a wife. I spent a lot of time thinking up the image of my imaginary wife. I based it on my ex-girlfriend.
Did you tell her about it?
Told. By the way, she now works in Guyana, that's in South America. I worked there before Iraq.
Did they make you say anything bad about England or the United States? I know that some people had to do that.
Yes, I had to do it on video several times. I had to say that the coalition was bad and the army was good, etc.
Were you forced to say all this somehow?
They pointed a gun at me and ordered me to speak into the camera. There was no point in arguing with such an argument.
Did you happen to meditate while you were held there?
Yes, all the time. Luckily, when I was a kid, my mom taught me yoga, so I was able to apply some knowledge.
You mentioned that in the last year you had a TV and a PlayStation. What did you play? What did you watch? Who gave them to you in the first place? What was your environment like? How many people were around you? How close was your relationship with your probation officers?
I played FIFA and some shooters. Sometimes the Iraqis and I would watch TV, mostly shows like CSI, NCIS, Escape. Escape really annoyed me. When I took this job, I thought I could change the world for the better. At that point, I had already worked in IT for a bunch of years and specialized in developing weirdos. My overlords were divided into 3 groups. 1. Total evil. Those were the ones who beat us. 2. The ones who just did their job. Didn't talk to us, just brought food and stuff. 3. Those who wanted to improve their English and learn more about us.
Were there moments when you thought you weren't going to make it?
I thought it would be over within 6 months. I didn't know if I would survive or not. In 2009 I was told that the others had been killed, so I was prepared for the same thing to happen to me.
How close to suicide were you? Have you had the opportunity to commit suicide?
I had this opportunity in mid-2009. I was going to use my chain. It would have been very symbolic to hang myself from the chain to which I had been strapped for 2 years. The only reason I didn't do it was because I wouldn't have been able to see how Iraqis reacted to my hanging body.
Do you think your captors are bad people, or are they good people, but from the other side of the conflict?
I don't think they're bad. It's just that they're at war. What's interesting is that the military was against Saddam Hussein.
Did you get any compensation for everything you went through? How were you greeted? With a red carpet? Who else from your family did you see first? What did you talk about?
There was no compensation, I just got paid my salary. The company I worked for declared bankruptcy in 2009. Our department was bought out by another company and paid my salary. The first people I saw when I returned to England were my foster parents.
Thank you very much for watching. Write in the comments what you think about it. See you in our next videos. Bye.